Hello everyone, it is Christine back and I'm going to share my approach to the second monogram that I'm going to create for Roxy's Journal of Stitchery Treasure Hunt, with our first prompt being an initial or a monogram. Now I've shared two videos already on the creation of my first monogram piece, which will go with my Treasury of Stitches as part of the Dictionary of Stitches Stitch Along project that I am doing with a lovely community of ladies. And this second monogram will go in a wall panel that I'm planning to make. So I've got a few Roxy projects on the go and I'll be using the prompts to create items to go into those. So this is for my Burgundy Bonheur, with Bonheur meaning happiness in French, and it's a French-inspired burgundy gold, creams, natural colours, hemps, linens, really rich, warm colours, perfect for winter, which is the season it is here. And I have this beautiful piece of toile fabric. It's not a huge piece, so that's sort of the size of it. So I do want to use it in my piece, and I'm planning to use a section and then work out how I sort of collage it into my piece. So let me talk you through the monogram that I'm going to use for this one. I found a monogram online and it's a vintage or antique design of a monogram. It was on a site called Needle and then the letter N and then thread.com. So they had a section on different monograms. And the reason I picked it is the initials of my name are C and then J and then O. So I've been busily looking for a monogram that has those in. And I was really lucky to find this one. It wasn't labelled as a CJO monogram, but it definitely has a C in it, definitely has an O. And I thought these sort of decorative features could be changed to be the J's, almost like a reflected J. So even though my name only has one J, it just gives that lovely sort of, I guess, symmetry element to the design. But because I want to do this one as a raised embroidery where I'll do backstitch and probably fill the whole piece in with backstitch, I didn't want to have all the sort of fiddly detailing. So I took this design, printed it out at the size I wanted it. And then I took my texture and I basically changed it into what I wanted as the simpler design. So you'll see I've just coloured in what I'm keeping as my design here. I've kept one of the flowers, so it does just have that one decorative element. I've kept just that little flourish off from the flowers, but then you'll see I've changed the J's so they actually now look like J's, or what used to be swirls now have become J's. And with the O, I've taken off these little bits over here. So now it's just an O that goes round and is just connected into the sweep of the C and connected by the touching points on the others. So I've simplified it right down, and then I followed the same technique that I've used previously, where I stuck this on a window. You put some double-sided tape around to stick the fabric on the paper. It was originally an A4 sheet. I've just cut it out to be smaller. But then I stuck that on the window with a piece of tape across the top of the paper and traced around it onto my design here using my friction marker, which I've now got a few more colours. I used to only ever have the black, but I've got the red, and I thought that would be perfect because if for some reason any of it doesn't come out, it will be part of the design, because I'm planning to use a ready burgundy that matches with the design here. Now I purposely have positioned my monogram so it will almost be like it's an extension of the scene. So I wanted it actually nested amongst these tree branches. I wanted, see the lady's she's got a little bird on her hand that she's talking to, but I wanted it kind of be, just above. So it's all part of that scene. So when I cut it out, I'll probably sort of take it around like this. I could potentially even leave that edge, potentially if we add something else as a piece of stitchery there. So I'm not planning to cut my pieces until we get some more prompts, and possibly not until the end when I'm actually arranging it all together in my piece. So the next thing we need to do is choose some threads, and I had these threads right at hand because the lovely Melanie from Reclaimed Textiles, I had a beautiful package from her that I shared a video on the other day. So it was actually a bag of goodies I had from her that I'd picked up quite a while ago, but hadn't actually shared a video. So I've got a whole selection of colours. And then behind me, I'm not sure how well you can see them, but I've got some other fabrics that I'm thinking of using in this piece, which will just help us, I think, as well in picking the colours to make sure we get something that will work with them. So beginning, I can see that this red would just be too vibrant. I think these will be too pink for what I'm wanting to achieve, which is more of a burgundy colour. Again, I think these would be too purple. This one is probably still just a tiny bit too sort of, yeah, pinky purple. This one would be too vibrant of the pink for what I'm after. And this one I think will actually just be just about perfect. Again, it might just be looking a tiny bit darker. Let me just flick my other light on and see if that helps to just let you see the actual colour of that. So I think that one's the go. I'll just put the other threads away so they don't get in our way. And I'm also going to pop the loop, not the loop, I'm going to pop the fabric in an embroidery hoop as well, just to help me keep the fabric nice and taut as I'm working it. So I'll just position it centrally. Tighten up my hoop. As I say, I don't often use hoops, but I have found it helpful when I was doing even the other one. Just and also filming it does help me out. So let's get some thread out from here. Slip that one off. We'll keep the labels so we know what it is. For those that are interested, it's a DMC. These are all vintage threads. DMC 3, is that the colour? 902. I'll just put those over there. And let's get a bit out of here. So I'm planning to just start with backstitch outlining, and then I can either then do an initial quantum of satin stitch, or I can kind of fill it all in with backstitch. Given this thread is quite full, it might be doable that way. Hopefully this needle eye will be big enough. I think so. And we'll just tie a little knot at the bottom. Okay. So I hope you're all having a great day or a great evening. Just start up here, I think. Oops. Really enjoying seeing everyone's take on the prompt. So many gorgeous creations so far. It's a lovely thick thread, so I think it's going to make my job quite easy. And I'm just using my forward and back stitch, which gives me a nice flat back. As opposed to the more crisscross back you get with the, I don't know whether to call it traditional, but the one that usually gets promoted as backstitch. But there are actually two varieties, which if you've been watching me for a while, you would have heard me mention that quite a bit since we learnt all about that in our recent backstitch for the Dictionary of Stitches, or for what I'm now calling my Treasury of Stitches. It's a lovely fine linen. It's beautiful. so happy to have a place to put some of my hoarded fabrics. And I love it when I have a package of goodies that I unpack and then I'm able to use them straight away, like this gorgeous thread. Such a good way to get a variety of threads at not an expensive price by getting, Melanie, purveyor of Reclaim Textiles. If you're in Australia, she's on Instagram, and she's great. She's here in Victoria, not too far away actually, so I'm able to happily pick up my goodie bundles from her. So I just shop for a while and then say, hey Melanie, can I swing by and pick them up, which is fabulous. I consider it my sort of coffee a day. I don't go out and buy myself a coffee. Instead, I'll just have a peruse of Melanie's site and see if there's a nice little section of fabric or a section of yarn that I'd like to purchase. She's always posting new things up, and it's amazing how quickly sometimes the things get snaffled. And you don't always get to see what's even been snaffled because as they sell, she removes them off the site. So it's only ever what's on there is what's in stock and still available. And people just post sold below it, so you can see if someone's posted a sold, but Melanie hasn't yet actually got to it. I'm just going to keep working around with my back stitch. So this is the piece that will sit at the very front of everything, I think. Oh no, I need to think what's going to be the front piece actually. Will it be the J's? No, actually I think I'll make my C the front bit. So what I'll do when I come down to it is I'll leave a gap, will I? Or will I? No, I think I'll stitch it, because then it will end up being, thinking aloud here. Thinking aloud. Do I stitch it or do I leave a gap so it's all at the same level of thickness? I'll have to decide soon because I'm almost up to my C. I think I'll just stitch over it, and then if the C is a bit more raised, I think that's a good effect as long as it's consistently then raised up. It's amazing how quickly it gets dark once the sun starts to go down. It just descends so fast. We are past the sort of heart of winter, but it still definitely gets dark. And still dark, until later in the mornings as well, which is nice for having sleep without waking up with the sun coming up. Now, if you find fabric is getting in the way of you when you are using something like a hoop, you can use the little clippy bits. I'll just show you because I might do it for myself. A few of my little clippy clips around here. Probably just put them like that. Like this, and they'll just stop the fabric kind of getting in my way like it was. So we're just outlining at the moment, just following our shapes around. And if you didn't have a printer, you could just trace onto paper off the screen of your computer or your iPad or device, and then use that as your basis to trace off, or you could go straight onto the fabric from your device using that as your light box. It's just unclipped itself. I just put that one like that. So a few methods to transfer, even if you don't have a printer. Don't know if you can hear the wind really rolling by outside. We're on a hill here, so it definitely gets wind. Quite a lot of trees around, so I was careful when I went out before with Travis not to go under any of the big gums, which can drop limbs. My poor mum, one time when she was coming to join us on a little holiday down the coast, yeah, a massive limb fell on her car as she was driving along the highway. So there was some eucalypts right up to the side of the road, and one of them came down on her car. Thankfully, she was not injured. Little Lucy, the dog, was not injured either. And the car was almost a write-off, but they did actually manage to repair it. But main thing was no one was hurt, no one else was hurt in the incident, but it was quite a shock for her. She was quite rattled by it, understandably. So whenever I see them even towering over the roads, I'm always a little bit wary these days, especially when the wind's blowing. There's a little loopy sort of bit at this end, a nice little decorative loopy bit. So I think that's probably fine for that. And then I'll just come back and add a bit more weight over here. To give it a bit more thickness. So just stitching on the other side of the line that I did on the outside. Maybe I need one up there, and I've just noticed a little gap up the top, which I'll just fill in as well. Oops, caught on my hoop. Always a hazard of using the good old hoop. So now I'll just pass my thread, just so I don't end up with big loopy bits. I'll just pass it back to where we want it to be up to. So you're just sort of attaching it through the existing stitches so it doesn't hang out loopy on the back. And then I'll emerge out here. I think I just need to tighten my fabric a bit more. There we go. So you could also do your monogram with different colours of thread. That would be another option as well if you had different letters that you wanted to pick out. But I think I just want to use a single colour because I don't want to compete too much with the beautiful toile. Yeah, it's interesting that monograms developed when many of the kings and the royalty, they couldn't actually write. So this was a way that they would kind of put their mark on things with others, yeah, creating their monogram for them and applying it to things. Then it's also got a more sort of, I guess, yeah, domestic use where young girls would create it as part of their sort of, yeah, their bridal chest of goodies for the future. They'd start by stitching their initials and then their husbands would get stitched on it later. It's amazing to think of all the hours of stitchery that have gone into things we now have in our little stashes, all the doilies and napkins and other things with beautiful history of stitching on them. I hope the people that created them, if they are watching in some way, hope they're interested in when I say watching, not obviously watching YouTube, but watching from somewhere in this big universe. Yeah, hopefully they're looking at them and thinking, oh, I'm glad they're being loved and used. I've gone quite esoteric, haven't I? That's what stitching will do to you. Okay, so I think what I'll do now is do some more stitches to just fill in the space because I do want it to have that sort of lifted design. Now I feel like I'm catching on a knot or something at the back, so I'm going to check what I'm doing and going to try and not catch on the knot. So I think I'll just maybe fill it in with a central satin sort of stitch, which is really just like a back stitch in some ways, but just doing it across it. It's quite tough in that area because there's a lot of thread behind it. There's that knot. Let's just push the needle. Sometimes if you can feel a knot, you can just angle the needle so that it's not trying to push through where the knot is. I think Sarah in her video was sort of couching down threads to give it that raised effect, but I think I'm going to get enough raising just from this thick Perle thread. I won't make you watch the whole process of doing it. I'll go away like I did on the other one and do some stitching and then come back to show you the sort of the finishing off, so you get to still see all of it, but you don't get bored. Don't want you bored. Feel free to ask any questions. I know we have a lot of people sort of either reinvigorating their embroidery or stitching practice or just new to it. But you're all going to do beautiful things. Don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed or intimidated. Yeah, we're a friendly bunch. Ask away. There's lots of great people on here creating as well as in the Facebook group, and yeah, just take inspiration from what others are doing. Ask questions, and people are always happy to answer. Hello everyone, it's Christine here, and I thought I'd better pop back on and show you progress with this piece. So I've been busily stitching away on it, and I've also been evolving the design as I go. So I'm one of those stitchers who finds as they stitch, the thinking about the piece does its work, and I will then come up with different things or little tweaks I want to make. From the earlier video, I was thinking of having a flower design here with some little tendrils out, but as I stitched, I really enjoyed the boldness of the design, and it started to really take on the consistency of like a wax embossed stamp on the fabric, and something very sort of regal to it. Almost like a carved stamp, because it actually has the sort of the texture from the thread, from the quite thick Perle thread that I'm using. And then I started to think, well, how do I get that sort of definition between the different elements of the design and give the sense of what's sitting at the front and what's sitting behind that? And that's when I had the idea to use some gorgeous vintage gold work thread and to actually emboss the edges of each of the elements. So the C is going to be sitting at the front, and I've started working on that. So the C, you'll be able to follow the outline all the way around. The J is then going to be the next letter sitting behind that. And then the O is going to be at the very back. So the O, you'll only see the elements embossed where they're not overlapped by any of the other letters. So I've started that process, and I'll show you that process in a moment. And I thought I'd also just show you how I filled in the rest of the letter. So I've got my big needle, and we'll start with that. And yeah, I just love that it's almost like a stamp has been placed on this sort of this vintage fabric to designate whose fabric it is. And I just love that the lady's almost sort of, the view line draws you up to that image. And what I'm thinking once I'm done is I'm going to use the gold work thread and stitch all around the design. So I think I'll leave the design as it is, although I may even, when I stitch it onto my base fabric, put a whole lot of seed stitches around, and I could potentially, and I'll see how it looks, bring some gold work up through the fabric as well. So it probably looks a bit darker on camera, but when it's up in the light, it is actually a similar colour to the piece. But it's definitely got that very regal sort of stamped sense to it, and it feels amazing. So it's very tactile. So let's get on and finish filling out this part of the C. I think I also, when I was working on it, just shortened this a little bit so it didn't go all the way across. I think they're the only other tweaks that I've made as I've been doing my stitching. And I have been, while I've been stitching, working in my hoop, but I wanted to show you it out of the hoop, so just forgive me while I get myself into position with the camera where I can also see. So I've just done, really just kept using, and I've got a thread coming through. Let's not get threads caught in it. I've just been using just a filling stitch, almost like a back stitch, or maybe a sort of a short and long, but not really a short and long. Just doing little stitches, following the shapes around. Sorry, I've got a bit of dog hair caught in that. Or no, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a thread. Thought it was Travis glitter again. Sorry, I've got my camera in an awkward position because I wanted to have it so that you could see it in the light. Otherwise it does take on a dark. Even when I was working on my blue monogram, which there's separate videos on, some people commented, oh, is that black? But no, it was just a dark navy. But it was looking very dark. I've been so busy on all my different projects. I've got my alphabet of stitches, or the dictionary of stitches as it's officially known, or treasury of stitches for this project. And then I've got my swap squares, making about 21 of those to go out into the world. Little squares of Stitchery, which is as part of the little Stitchery swap that the lovely Annie Claxton kicked off, Arty Farty Annie. So busily working away on those. I was really keen to get particularly the overseas ones off, but I know some of even my Australian stitching buddies, they've already sent them my way, so I'm just like, oh, I've really got to get going on those. and each one's being tailored to the individual. So there's quite a bit of time that goes into the picking out of the materials, working out the composition. It's not a big space, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, but there's a lot you can fit in. But I just find them so joyful. They're just lovely, lovely pieces to create. Sorry, the fabric's really, having been working in a hoop, I'm now finding the fabric's really annoying me, just sort of flapping around. I'm not normally much of a hoop girl for sewing, but definitely helpful. Probably because I'm using a bigger needle as well, so it tends to be a bit more. Could probably just hold a bit of the fabric out of the way, but then you can't really see what's going on, so that's not ideal. Anyway, we'll just do this last little end bit, and then we can do a bit of the gold work together in case you want to do your own. I don't think I'm doing the gold work particularly sort of technically fabulously, but it's a technique that gets a nice little edge on it. And I have a lot of metallic threads, including this really nice vintage one that I think might even, I don't know if it's got real gold in it, but it's definitely got a sort of a real metallic feel, not like just the plasticky ones that are the more modern ones. So yeah, it's rather nice. So if I can see any bits of the fabric through, I just sort of add a stitch there. It's a very imprecise filling technique because the Perle is so thick. You can just get a really lovely effect just by doing little stitches, and you just get those lovely textural bobbles, which is great. So I'll get this video posted, and then I'll probably come back and show you the finished product in another video, and I might even kick off then my third monogram in that next video. That might be the go. But I better get some more Stitchery squares done, I think. I've got all my videos done for the Stitch Along this week, the Dictionary of Stitches or Treasury of Stitches. And we're doing amazing bullion knot roses and teddy bears and all sorts of wonderful things. So if you would like to join, we've even got a little Facebook group now, which is great, where our members can, or our community can share their photos of their parts of the Stitch Along. Managed to catch another thread. There we go. Okay, pop that in my needle holder. So there we go. You can see where the hoop's been. I need to give it a good iron. So that's all filled in. So let's grab our gold thread. So this one's a really nice gold colour. Some of them I find look a little bit sort of not authentic in colour. But it's a nice gold. Now with metallic threads, you want to work in small lengths of them because they do get worn out by going through the fabric. So I'm just going to do quite a small length. And I like to use a needle that's bigger than the thread and with a bigger eye, because I think that helps to just reduce the drag on the thread. And I also don't do the tying technique where I run the knot down the thread. I just tie at the bottom to again avoid creating wear on the thread, because most gold threads are created by having the gold material wrapped around an inner string, and so the outer sort of wrapping is prone to wear, if that makes sense. So as I mentioned, I'm keeping the C as the front of the design, so I'll be stitching all the way around the C with the gold. The next one that sits under the C will be the two J's, and then the O is underneath that. So as you can see, this J sits under the C, and so I've already stitched all of that. Next will be to sort of stitch down there, but I was thinking, where will we do some work on this that sort of continues along? yeah, maybe we'll continue down there. And sorry, I need to come through from the back. Don't get too excited, Christine, and start stitching on the front. Okay, sorry, I'll bring it back into frame, get myself in a place where I can see as well. Got it quite close up, as I mentioned, so it's just that extra bit tricky. Sorry, and I've just unthreaded my needle on the first go. We shall get there. I had been actually doing the gold work in the hoop as well, but I think it's going to actually be easier because what I'm doing is actually just catching the edge of the thread that's already there. So I'm really just kind of embossing the side of that with lots of little over stitches to the point where I get it to the thickness that I want. And I want a decent thickness because I want to be able to see the gold edging. I have also just started doing some little stitches around because I thought in case I needed anything to anchor to, but I've found that this technique works pretty well to be able to just start to build up stitches. So we'll just work on this little section so you can sort of see the building up process occur. As I say, I don't think this is particularly sort of technical, but it's working. It's giving the effect I want. And as long as I work in little lengths, yeah, it seems to work okay in terms of not wearing the thread too much. Or if it does get worn, I just, yeah, take it through the back and tie it off. But usually that's happening when it's about getting to that point anyway. And I think because I'm not pulling it backwards and forwards through the fabric, I'm just working in a sense on the top using my upper stitches. I almost put the needle actually through my finger earlier on. I went to reach down onto my mat and didn't realise there was I shouldn't do it, where I just sort of prop a needle in my felt mat. But yeah, almost ended up through my finger. I was joking about that when someone said, oh, will you do some live stitch along videos? And I said, I'll probably end up skewering my finger or something in it. Sorry, that was the needle making that noise. I have to remember not to put on hand cream right before doing a video, although my hands get so dry, so I tend to need to do it, but it just makes it a bit hard at times to move the needle. So we're getting a nice amount of thickness there, I think, so we can keep moving down. And you can just also, because it's sort of metallic, you can just maneuver it where you want it. Gives it a nice, sorry, I'll bring it back into camera. Oops, got my two threads, just have to. It's the only bad thing about using metallic thread is that, yeah, you're only using little lengths, so you do tend to have to re-thread relatively frequently. But much better than wasting it by having too much wear on it. So I know I would have said this earlier in the video, in the first part of it, but I hope you are having a great day or a great evening. And thanks so much for stopping by to watch. If you'd like to see more sewing adventures, I get the stitch along videos up every day, and then I try and share as many other videos as I can as well. So feel free to subscribe, and as always, yeah, just really appreciate when you leave a comment if I can get to know you. If you've got a channel, if you're making videos, let me know. If you're taking part or getting inspiration, it's just, yeah, keeps me inspired and motivated too. Although I love sharing. I love sharing the creation and the crafting, so I'd be doing it anyway. But yeah, it's nice to have that little uplift. I think it means a lot to all of us that are, yeah, doing the creating. But I just love the communities that are assembling around all the projects, whether it's the Roxy project, the Stitch Along, Annie and her Stitchery swap and her Discord community and her Facebook group. Just so many lovely, supportive communities. That's why I think I keep doing it, because yeah, you're finding with each video, you're potentially finding another person that's part of your extended tribe of crafty, collaborative, creative, lovely folks. I am convinced that the creative folks in this world, they're the good eggs. Okay, so I'm getting towards the end of this. We'll try and get a few more stitches. It hasn't unraveled yet, but I can see at the end that it's just starting to contemplate a bit of unraveling. Whether I can even thread with that end now. Might just need to snip a little bit off. Just bear with me. So we'll probably only do a few more stitches. And then I think now's the time to take it through, because I can just hear that the thread, you just get a bit of a feel for the thread and a hearing of the thread, and you're like, yep, I think it's at the end of its useful life. So as you can see from the back at the start, I was doing more stitching sort of backwards and forwards through the fabric, but I'm pretty happy now with this technique of working just on the edge and anchoring to the existing threads. So I like to be able to kind of, test things out and then show you the technique that I find works best. So that's how it's looking so far. So I still need to, do it evenly all the way around, but I think that's going to work really well to give a sense of the letters and sitting sort of atop each other, and just love it. As I say, it looks dark when it's down on the table, but when it's up, I think the colour's great. I want something that's bold, but I want something also that's that goes with the design. And all the toiles were really came about to sort of be inspiration by and really pay tribute to the value of the country. So I kind of like that this has that rustic feel, almost like a stamp that's been carved out of wood or something. It's almost got that sort of mottled woody effect on it. And I think, it'll be lovely if I can extend the gold into the work around this piece of toile, and then that will all just sort of form a scene on my stitchery. And who knows, I might even end up using this whole piece of toile and integrating other elements, other prompts into it. So it's all, who knows what adventure lies in front. So I'll stop there. Thanks so much for watching, and then stay tuned for another video. If you want to be notified of it, hit the subscribe button, and I'll come back and share where I got to on this piece. So thanks everyone, and see you soon. Bye.